let's now have Aman Agarwal from Charge Voice from Panchkula up on stage.
Okay, hi. My name is Aman, and can I have the pointer?
The point is on the.
Which one? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay, okay, yeah. So this is what I talk about. So my presentation is about something which I think is it concerns all architects, but somehow we've just sort of lost focus of this somehow. I don't know. Okay. So this is the Kailash temple on the left, and that is what 3D printers have been doing these days, right? And I think that's the future and that's the past, and we are somewhere in the middle. And you know, it's like we always want to compare the past to the future, what happened in the past and what's going to happen in the future. And we are obviously in the middle, right? So, you know, in the past, what was circumstantial is to technology, it's almost become like a variable that the technology is using. And to past, what was universal, to technology, it's become the constant, right? And I will just elaborate on this a little more. So the circumstantial is what we focus on, like the context, the function, the material, technology, climate, culture, financial workability. I think these are the factors we've been all talking about. It's the focus of our education system, it is the focus of our publication, and it is definitely the focus of all clients. But, okay, yeah, so I will focus my talk on something completely different. I will focus on my talk on, you know, what has been the universals of architecture, and somehow they've lost focus. I will talk about light, gravity, you know, elements of nature, and human perception. These four things, I believe, is something that is universal to architecture everywhere. And I will just try and talk about it, and I will try and relate it to, you know, what technology is trying to do with this. Okay, so if I talk about gravity, I think this is the easiest way of talking about gravity, right? Gravity is like that invisible static force which builds all architecture, right? And the Egyptians understood this, and this is like the largest pieces of stone, they just started stacking above one another and they made the pyramid, right? So it's the manifestation of gravity. In ancient in ancient architecture, you know, the colonnades and the weight and this structural order was gravity. Now this is another form of, you know, sort of talking about gravity, right? You're just, it's about the same static force, but you are just transmitting that static force instead of those huge large columns, you're doing it in thousands of slender columns, right? To me, I think this is the most amazing thing if you talk about gravity. And then this is also about gravity, but it's just anti-gravity. You know, this is like Calatrava, who is the best form of engineering, and he would make sure that, you know, it touches the ground at the most, in the lightest way possible, right? So this is what engineering has done. This is what technology has done. It's made us think about gravity slightly differently. But at the end of the day, you know, we've sort of, we talk about so many things, but we don't understand that it's the gravity that's what is creating the entire architecture as a whole, I would say. And then I will talk about light. This, I believe, is like the simplest image when you start talking about light, right? The bullseye at the Pantheon. To me, this image, it talks about two things. One, you know, how, you know, you can create as much symmetry as you like in architecture, and light will be asymmetric 95% of the times. It will just be asymmetric. It will never be with that symmetry, and it will keep on rendering architecture in a different way. This is, again, it's about light, but it's just solid light piercing through translucent light. I am talking about all this because, I want you to think that we somehow don't talk about this anymore. I haven't seen a picture in any publication which talks about light the same way, or something like this, light creating a pattern, light creating the texture, or light building time. Gravity builds space, light builds time. We don't click pictures like this anymore. The third thing that I talk about is the elements of nature. These 5 elements of nature, the sky, the sun, the water, the wind, and the earth. Again, we have been talking about context, we've been talking about a lot of variables, but at the end of the day, it's about these 5 elements, right? It's how powerful you can make these elements inside your buildings. You can introduce fragments of these elements and make them more powerful. And these are all images from just great architects, who understood nature and just made it really powerful. The last thing that I talk about is human perception. I think this is a sketch of architecture. If you ask a kid, he will draw, right? And it is as simple as a plinth, the relation to the sky, and something in between. And if you look at the most magnificent architecture, actually it is this. It's the same thing, right? That was in Europe, this is in Ranakpur. The same story. It's only the scale changes according to the function, the scale changes according to what you want to do, and it changes again. It's the same thing. If you look at it, it's just the same architecture. And this brings me back to my last slide. I was talking about the variables and the constants. What has happened is that us architects, now we are so concerned about the variables that we've forgotten the constants. And do you know what technology is doing? It is so amazing that the technology has full control, the ASI, ARI, whatever you talk about, all the artificial intelligence in design technology, it has full control over the variables. It will give you 50 solutions out of all the variables when you put it in. But the one thing the artificial technology is always trying to learn is the constants. It's about that human perception, that sense of aesthetics, that all the 4 things that I talk about, how humans will perceive light, that is what I think AI is trying to learn, and we are forgetting it. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you.